travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin lore podcast. Last week, we talked all about our hardest working Liyue member, Keqing.
And you thought Ryu's story was depressing. We're going to talk about the shades of Tokyo, the sun children of Enkanomiya.
Looking for a beacon to guide you through the darkness? We'll step right into our spotlight and let us melt your worries away by heading over to our website. That's talesofteyvat.com, where you can find illuminating visuals for each of our episodes. They're just there swimming around waiting for you.
Our site also includes links to our past seasons and special episodes, artist spotlights from the community for every episode, and wallpapers to download.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, please feel free to give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. It just helps us know that you're enjoying it and lets other travelers know that they can find some fun lore going on here. That being said, we're going to jump into what I would call the opposite of fun lore. And actually called depressing lore and sad lore and lore that makes your jaw drop.
Yeah.
Sag.
But before we get into the espresso depresso of the evening, we should talk a little bit about the history of Enkanomiya, because that is where we're going to find ourselves tonight.
And I know for myself, I get confused so many times about how did Enkanomiya end up down there? Why is it down there? Why is it not part of Watasumi? Did it just go down and then just shove itself right underneath Watasumi? I always get so confused. So I'm probably not the only one.
Yeah, how is it not under actual water?
Yes, like what? It found a hole in the ground.
It found a bubble universe. Or it's underwater. But you know how like sometimes underwater is not truly underwater, but it's upside down?
Like the Melazines.
Exactly. Or maybe they're just in a cave underwater, like Mariana's Trench. Like it's just enough to not be submerged.
You said Mariana's Trench, and I can only think of the Canadian pop punk band.
There's a band called Mariana's Trench? Wait, what?
I don't know if I'm thinking of the same thing as you, Fiends, but I really hope it is, because I hear it and I hear Mariana Cross, that song.
No.
Mariana.
That is by Ghosts.
Thank you.
I do like that song. No, Mariana's Trench, I actually saw them in concert in Niagara Falls a few years ago. Very fun. The guy had blue hair. I forget his name off the top of my head. If you know him, let us know. But a quick geographical lesson on Enkanomiya. Way back when, before Venti was around, or Zhongli, possibly. We're not really sure about Zhongli. But way back in time, Primordial One fought the second who came. And their fight created an eruption that sunk Enkanomiya into the sea. Dun, dun, dun. And so Enkanomiya sunk into what is assumed to be the Dark Sea, unknown for sure. And they entered what was known as a godless land. They didn't have a god at the time. They felt abandoned by the gods. Only Istaroth, who was a shade of the Primordial One, would come and help them occasionally. They were being constantly attacked by the Bathismal Vashops. It was not good going on down there. Before we jump into more history, to go back to the geography, Enkanomiya eventually opens up a hole into what is now Watasumi Island using Urabashi. I know we've talked a little bit about that here and there, but Urabashi is able to lead the people up, and his body creates these beautiful pink scales, corals as we call them, which create the Watasumi Island that we see today. So the people of Watasumi Island are actually OG inhabitants of Enkanomiya. To add to that geographically and not historically, we have presumed in some prior episodes that Enkanomiya may be on the same plane as Khaenri'ah. Is that accurate?
I mean, I would say so.
Yeah, although I'm starting to feel like maybe it's not.
Like on Khaenri'ah's level?
Right. I mean, it could be, but just because of like how Enkanomiya is sort of at this like convergence of like the different realms, and I haven't seen anything about Khaenri'ah really being like that, but it could be like there's arguments to be made either way, I think.
We just know that at some point the Conrians came over with a ruin guard to get that book of Sun and Moon.
Yeah.
Wait, the Conrians did or the Abyss Order?
The Conrians came looking for the book, but they did not get it.
Oh, so that was pre-Enjo?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And that's why he's like looking for it and he's mad that it's not there. And we're like, okay, we don't know. Everyone's betraying you. You're betraying them. Stop burning down libraries.
Which comes one of the best lines ever when Enjo says, well, I totally betrayed them. Like, don't get it wrong.
Just the whole Genshin community. He's just their mouthpiece, and I love it. And you know what? We need more Enjo. I want more Enjo smut.
The White Day art was everything.
Yeah.
Very unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
And one last geographical thing for Enkanomiya. Brandon mentioned that Enkanomiya is at the interconnection of 3 of the planes. And Brandon, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's elemental, light. No, because they're the same thing.
You forget it every time.
I never can remember it. An element is like fire for me. Like, I don't know. What are they, Brandon?
The light realm is the elemental realm. It's
Damn
the
it.
same thing. So
I knew it as I said it.
it's probably easier to remember if you just think of it as the elemental realm.
Okay.
And then you have the human realm and then the void realm. And so all 3 of these realms are sort of converging right where Enkanomiya is.
And we've talked before that these realms are kind of the equivalent to layers in a 7-layer dip.
Yeah. That's a fun way to think of it. Or at least the human on top of the elemental realm is. I don't know about the void. The void realm might be the outside of the dip.
Oh, like the
It's
crusty
the
corners.
container. It's the container.
The container.
The
Yeah,
burn signs.
it's the mouth that eats the dip.
No, the container is the bubble universe that we are stuck in.
I thought the whale was the mouth.
Oh my God.
No, the whale is the chip that got stuck in there and someone else eats it by accident.
And
I love
the
this.
Remurian flood is the soda that someone knocks over on the table.
The Coca-Cola
Sizzling. Oh,
now! We should make some 7-layer Tavat dip. That'd be fun.
I don't know. Well,
But I don't like 80% of the things in a 7-layer dip, so I'm gonna make my
Same.
own. It's just gonna be
Travesty.
cheese.
just cheese.
Well, I support that too. 7-layer cheese dip.
But I want to jump a little bit back now into the history of Enkanomiya because it's actually super important before we talk about the Sun Children to have this like base layer of information. I mentioned that Enkanomiya sunk into the sea and none of the gods went to visit them. Womp, womp, womp. And by none of the gods, I mean the primordial one and the second who came, which is really the only gods Enkanomiya knew. Istaroth, one of the shades of the primordial one, did go and visit the people of Enkanomiya. We don't know why, we don't know what the reasoning was, but they did. And they actually talked to this person, Abaraku.
Wait, before we get into that, I just wanted to say regarding Istaroth, one of my favorite lines from Before Sun and Moon is when they're just sort of, describing Istaroth poetically, aka Kairos, and they say, she is the moment. And I just think it's like, it just sounds like the perfect like gay slang of like back that like she is the moment, y'all. She is the moment.
What if in the year of our Lord 2470 what the prize of winning RuPaul's Drag Race is having an entire realm to yourself? Honestly, that is a moment. And I'm here for it.
Enkanomiya is Istaroth's interior illusions lounge.
Yes!
So RuPaul, aka Istaroth, goes down to check on the people of Enkanomiya and talks to a person named Abaraku. I hope I am pronouncing that right.
I believe you are.
It's a rare occasion on this podcast. Abaraku talks to Istaroth, and Istaroth gives him just enough smarts to create something called the Helios. At least that's what Abaraku likes to call it. Helios, aka the divine chariot of the sun, which of course all I can think about is the sun chariot that crashed down into Tavat.
Same.
No.
And is it actually in Kanomiya? Is that what crashed down into the sea?
Well,
Sun Chariot. I know that they don't work on the same time, but it's just like they keep reusing these same like sayings that you're like, wait, are you trying to tell me something?
Well, maybe the Sun Chariot that fell topside
Mhm.
was similar, and Istaroth, knowing how it was made up above, gave them the secrets on how to
Oh.
make it down below. So it's like the
Okay.
same kind of thing.
that was exactly what I was thinking, Brandon.
Twinsies.
Zhongli witnessed that one fall, and Urabashi witnessed this one. So Abaraku is given this information from Istaroth, and he's like, all right, lit, I'm gonna make this. And he makes what is known as the Danichi Mikoshi.
You're on a roll.
Yes. Let's see if I can continue to say everything right.
I'm knocking on wood because you just jinxed yourself at that
I know.
point. Knocking on wood.
The Dainichi Mikoshi, aka the Helios, aka the Divine Chariot of the Sun, also called the Hyperion, also called the Byakuya no Hikari, was an artificial sun. And Istroth gave him the information to make this in order to help them ward off the baptismal Vishops that continually attacked them. He was able to build it. They were able to ward off the Vishops.
Now, can we just talk about how terrifying it would be? First, like, you're in a chunk of land that, like, just an earthquake happens and the earth opens up and, like, you fall into, like, some deep unknown place. And then everything is pitch black. And then there are dragon creatures, like, hunting and killing people everywhere
Yeah.
Mhm.
for who knows how long before this was created. I just love the idea that like they fell down there and like these baptismal bishops were already there terrorizing people. Like they were just like, oh, humans, let's go.
I mean, I think I've watched that movie before with Vin Diesel.
The
It's called
Pacifier?
Pitch Black. No. Pitch Black. He's like got some crazy. I think they made a newer one called Riddick or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's part of the
Riddick.
Riddick series.
And he's down and it's all dark and it's got crazy eyes and there's.
It
things coming.
is similar to that. You're right.
Yeah.
It made me think of, and this is so specific because we just watched the episode, but it makes me think of Cordelia in Buffy when she's thrown into the alt universe. All of a sudden, she can't go out at night. She can't do anything. She's stuck inside or with a cross.
Getting her neck attacked.
Yeah,
Oof.
like imagine the Vishops is. I feel like the Vishops are ankle biters, though.
I mean, they're a little bit bigger than your ankle, though.
We don't know how big these people in Enkanomiya were.
Well, aren't they? They're stuck underneath it.
I think to people without a vision, they would be pretty deadly.
Nah, these
Mm.
people. This guy built an artificial sun. Like,
But
I don't
with the
know.
help of a god, the
Okay,
god of
well-
moments, aka the moment. She is the moment.
But we don't know what they did or what help they got before they sank into the sea and what powers they might have already had. We don't know. There could have been Sealies living down there. There could have been wisps.
So it's not that you think that the baptismal Vishops were like tiny little like Yorkshire Terriers, but that the people were stronger. Is that what you're saying?
Or bigger. I mean, I just think of Chenyu Vale's murals with these like people who are 30 feet tall.
I don't think so though, because when you see the sin shades in Enkanomiya, aren't they normal size?
Yeah.
That's because they've lost part of their souls, like Paimon.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Yeah. But you can fight the baptismal Vishops underneath the Dainichi Mikoshi.
Yeah, I fucking
Mhm.
hate that boss.
Because I made you fight that thing like 35,000 times.
Yeah, we needed it for Shenhe. And who?
and yeah, Miko. And I'm gonna make y'all do it again because I have both of them now.
I was like, for who, Al? I was so confused. I was like, who's the new person?
I have all of the characters except for Rena, and it pisses me off because she eluded me and her sword. Fuck it. I'm so sad.
Oh, I have her sword on Albedo.
I am so.
I forgot you switched it from Kaya to Albedo.
Yeah, Albedo keeps just getting these 5-star swords. He had the titty sword for a while, and then I gave him Farina's sword. They won't give him a 5-star sword, so I gotta help him out a little bit.
a little bit. Yeah.
But my beautiful boy aside, I'm back to another guy, not necessarily as great as Albedo, but Abaraku,
AKA Abrax.
Abrax. So he changed the way of life in Enkanomiya. People were like, this is amazing. And it started a chapter called Sun and Moon, which was an era down there. And this was the first year of it. And then comes the terrible part.
Well, first there was peace.
Yeah, for like 6 days.
Because they realized
For
that the
6
bishops
days.
were afraid of light.
Yeah.
Before the Dainichi Mikoshi was created, they were just like constantly having to try to chase the bishops away with like torches or lamps or something. Once this was created, it actually kept them away. So they were like, oh my God, we can actually live peacefully here.
Which, can I ask a quick question or opinion of you guys? Do you think that Istaroth knew the Vishops were afraid of light because the shades of the Primordial One were around when the Primordial One fought the Dragon Lord?
I don't know, because I was always wondering if, because they're from the elemental / light realm, but
Mhm.
we also know from, this book that the bishops are very adaptable and they evolve really easily. So I'm thinking that they were sort of, they ended up there after the seven sovereigns were vanquished by the primordial one, and that they had just kind of evolved to
Okay.
thrive in darkness and avoid light because that's what their environment was.
It kind of reminds me of in Skyrim, I think it's the Dwarmer or something, whatever. Like these specific elves that lived underground for so long that they went blind and they have super amazing hearing. And that would always freak me the fuck out.
Yeah, it's like fish that live in caves
Yeah.
where no light reaches them, or even at the the bottom of the ocean where no light reaches, that they evolve to not need eyes and to like just sort of thrive in their environment because that's where they're at. And apparently the bishops evolve really quickly in that way. I couldn't find anything that sort of confirmed that. We do know that they do evolve quickly, so I kind of took it as that because I didn't really understand why they were afraid of light, being from the elemental realm.
Interesting. I'm
Yeah.
just curious if like Istaroth knows that because of like insider knowledge, or did Istaroth come down and chat with Abaraku, who was like, hey, like whenever we like can make fire, it scares them, and Istaroth was like, oh, well, I have the trick for you.
He was like, hey, whenever you get a moment, and she was like, bitch, I am the moment. Write this down. Write this down.
It's like
Ugh.
correct.
But no, you guys are right. We did have a year of peace, not 6 days, but a whole year. That's it.
I wonder how long they were down there before this.
Before Isroth helped them.
Before the Dainichi was created.
I also wonder how long it took to make the Dainichi.
Yeah, like it's probably didn't go up in a day.
And I gotta tell you, that is really impressive to me that this thing was built in the dark while
Yeah.
chasing the shops away.
Yes. Which I also just have to point out that I love the fact that both Fiends and myself will never yield to bees bishops. They're always bishops.
Yeah, the shop of shops.
Bishop,
They're
shop,
bishop,
shop,
A shop.
salad.
But also, Brandon, to go to your timeline question, right? We know that if we're going to assume that Istaroth saw the sun chariot fall in Tevat and then recommended recreating that in Enkanomiya, and we know that Enkanomiya sank during the fight between the primordial one and the second who came, I feel like we can assume they were down there for a really long time
Yeah,
before they got light. Like that.
that's what I was thinking. Also because there's only 7 son children and they didn't even live to adulthood. So, I mean, I guess they could have had different lifespans, but that would, that's only like maybe like what, 55 years or something.
Maybe, if not like even less than, because if we think about the timeline of when these sun children were kind of like quote unquote power puppets, it definitely seemed like they were around for maybe 5 years.
Yeah, I was thinking like 5 to 7 years, probably.
Yeah, I was thinking like 8 years old max.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was giving them like 10 or 11. Oh,
Yeah. I was thinking that they would have been about, I think they probably would have been like, sacrificed at the age of 10 to 12 and maybe were put
Okay.
into power at like 5.
Oh no, they were put into power at infancy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
What sense does that make? Goo goo gaga. What does that mean?
I mean, they
Like,
weren't doing anything anyway. Really think
Because
about
it's a
it.
religion.
I hate it.
Yeah.
They're the chosen ones.
But is that what? Is it Buddhism?
Buddhists do child sacrifice?
No, 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 no. That Buddha is like born as a child, like becomes. when they-
Oh, yes.
Buddha. Am I making this shit up?
No, so that's not the Buddha, that's the Dalai Lama.
Dalai Lama. Thank
I
you.
got you. But I mean, I understand why you thought Buddha, because when his parents were pregnant with said Buddha, they had a dream that if he would either become, someone of religion or become this amazing warlord. And they're like, well, we're going to keep him inside to be a warlord. Like, yo. And so the opposite happened. He became very religious and he is now the Buddha. Well, what is the Buddha? Anyway, the Dalai Lama is the one that's reborn.
I do know a little bit more like tidbits that we have of the timeline. We know that the Sun children stuff, which we're going to talk about more in just a second, but we know that that whole regime ended after Urabashi went down into Enkanomiya, and that happened after the Archon War.
Yes.
So we know that the Archon War ended around, what, 2,000 years ago?
Yeah, 2,600 years ago.
So if it was after that, Urabashi is found down in Enkanomiya, then we don't know how long in between there. Well, actually, don't we know when Urabashi was killed by A?
Oh,
Yes, we do, and I will tell you.
Was it like 1,000 years? Or do we know like when Watasumi came back up? Because Urabashi comes up with them and then gets killed.
no. So what I believe happened is that Urabashi led the people up, and then if we remember us talking about Moon's Moon and all that jazz during Kokomi's episode, where we briefly talked about this other noble family from Enkanomiya that ruled alongside the Sangonomiyas, they were fighting against that Tengu guy who got killed, and A was like, I'm gonna wreak hellfire because you killed my friend from the blanket,
Not the blanket friend.
and kills Urabashi. So
Mhm.
I do believe that was at the end of the Archon War. I do believe it's A acting as the puppet shadow for Makoto at the time.
hmm
Right. If you don't prescribe to the puppet theory, she could have just been acting as a general.
Well, she's the shadow regardless.
But so if the Archon War ended like 2,000-ish years ago, and do we know how long the Archon War lasted, like when it started?
It started at different times in different regions, so it gets really difficult to say like a concrete time it started.
Because Urabashi went down into Enkanomiya after being quote unquote defeated in the Archon War. So it had to have already started. And so Urabashi was only there during the time length of the war.
So it would have had to have been before 2,600 years ago. I think it stated somewhere in Sumeru that the Archon War was, at least it started around 4,000 or so years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought the Archon War was about 2,000 years.
It took place over 2,000 years, and it was 2,000 years ago, so it gets a little confusing. But yeah,
So Brandon, to go off of that though, so it ended 2,000 years ago, which means it started 4,000 years ago because it lasted 2,000 years.
So, but we don't know like how long after it started that Urabashi went down there. But I guess it's hard to say, like if the sun chariot that fell that Zhongli saw topside when he was young, and we know he's 6,000 years old, do we know if that coincided with the battle with the second who came? Because if so, then they were down there for 2,000 years, at least 2,000 years before the Dainichi was created. Does that sound right?
It's possible, because we don't really know when the second who came, because we don't know that exact timeline, because we don't know how long ago, the reign of dragons was. We don't know if that was like 10,000 years ago. We still don't know when the Sealy Court was kind of around. We just know that when the sun chariot fell, Zhongli was young enough to witness it. So let's say maybe between 10 to 40 years old. But hell, 1,000 years could also be young in his mind.
I feel like the Sun Chariot probably fell when he was 500, which would be 5,500 years ago. I'm making that up, but that feels young. And then you could say that the Archon War started 4,000 years ago. So somewhere between 5,500 years ago and 4,000 years ago, which is 1,500 years, is when they developed the Helios and made the sun and everything like that underground. Because we know that Urabashi puts an end to the Sun Children, but we don't know like how long he was chilling down there. And we also can assume that the Sun Children reign was only like somewhere between 50 and 100 years. So they were probably down
Right.
there for like 13 or 1,400 years with no light. Which, like, Istaroth, why did it take you so long?
Right? It's like, the fuck's happening, dude? It is said that I think the child that asks Urabashi to be the god of Enkanomiya, for them to like, hey, come down and come to us and let us worship you, found him in a cave.
Yeah, he was hiding.
So it's likely that it didn't happen like when he was founding, like given that option. It's like, ooh, this is a good opportunity. I could be a fucking god.
We don't know who defeated Urabashi during the Archon War. It's assumed to be A and Zhongli scaring him away based on some like fun facts. And I don't want to I don't want to talk too much about Urabashi because we do have an episode coming up on him later in the season.
That's true. That'll probably clear my confusion.
I do want to backtrack though, because we have skirted around the entire topic of this episode, which is the Sun Children. So I did want to give a quick definition before we jump into the exact history. According to the Genshin wiki, the Sun Children, or the Phaethons, were the puppet rulers of Enkanomiya during the period after the Dainichi Mikoshi was built, before Urabashi assumed control. So, Sun Children, guys. We had this one great year of sun and moon that was full of peace and kumbaya and like s'mores. I don't know what else you do in peaceful times.
Yeah.
Maybe baking some babies because there were a lot of kids around, apparently.
Mhm. And there were some very pissy people.
There were a lot of unknowns. It doesn't look like there necessarily was a system of like aristocracy or power or anything like that. So there was this group of nobles and they were like, we got to figure this out. We need to make power. We need to somehow do something that's going to give us power. So they decided they're going to convince people that the Dainichi Mikoshi is a god. So this man-made light system. So a light bulb. Imagine looking at your light bulb and going, that's a god.
They're moths. It's an entire colony of moths.
This is where Mothman originates, guys.
Damn! Not West Virginia. He came from Enkanomiya.
I bow to the altar of my god, and his name is Phillips.
Yes!
Damn, dude, we got a dumb truck. Fuck.
So they're able to convince everyone that the Dainichi Mikoshi is a god, and that the only way we can speak to this god is through a child. A child. Not with an E. I want to make sure that's very specific. This is a no E child. This is a true kid.
All I can think of now is the vine.
I know that's what I was thinking of. A child. So they are able to convince everyone that children need to speak on behalf of this robotic god, the light bulb god. And they decide that they're going to choose a kid, and that kid's going to be known as the Sun Child. And they will be in charge of ruling the land. Mwahahaha. And the first Sun Child, Rikoru, actually really looked up to Abaraku, the one who made the Dainichi Mikoshi, which is curious because he knew that it was this man-made system, but also knew that it was now a god. So I'm sure this kid was very confused. And this kid looked up to Abaraku. And Abaraku was like, nah, fuck this. This is terrible. And he was truly 100% against using the Dainichi as a god and using a child to speak on behalf of this quote-unquote god's behalf. The issue here is that the Sun Children were often manipulated by these nobles who put all this into place. And our very first sun child was convinced that Abaraku was evil and terrible, and he was therefore accused by the first sun child of high treason.
Yeah, they basically convinced the child that Abaraku was saying all this stuff basically to kill him and overthrow him so he could be in charge. Therefore, treason.
This is so, and I know we'll get into all the Greek stuff at some point, but this happened in Delphi, or Delphi if you want to call it that, but it's Delphi. I'll judge you. Where the oracles, because they were so fucked up out of their mind because they're inhaling all this smoke and shit, and giving oracles, it was so easy to manipulate them to say shit that could clearly easily get a peaceful king of a city-state to declare war on somebody.
Right.
It's like, fuck.
I also found this whole manipulation tactic by the nobles very reminiscent of other things that we see in pop culture today. Specifically, I thought of the book/movie Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I don't know if anyone's ever read the book or watched the movie, which stars Charlize Theron. But it's about this character of Libby, and when she's very young, her entire family, except for her and her one brother, are murdered. And she is convinced by the police that her brother did it, and she gives a testimony that puts her brother in jail. And many years later, at a convention for people involved with murders and serial killers, where she's signing things to make money.
Wow.
Yeah, that she basically she got a trust fund, they fundraised for her when everyone was killed and her brother was put in jail, and she blew through all that money, and now she needs to make money, so that's what she's
Her
doing.
GoFundMe.
Yeah, her and this was before GoFundMe too. So yeah, but her OG GoFundMe, whatever that is, a cash drive, I don't know, a church thing. I got questions. But she runs out of cash. She's broke. And so she's going to these conventions, and this group of people believe that her brother is innocent. They basically start yelling at her. And that starts really the story of her going on this mission to find out, was she truly manipulated by the police, or did she tell the truth because she was so young? And that, I feel like the Sun children never got to have their moment where they got to figure out the truth. But that's what that made me think of.
And the reason why they never got to have their moment in the sun, if you should say, or I guess Sino would say, is because the nobles actually realized that these kids were going to grow up and actually figure this shit out. I don't know. They kind of looked at these kids and they're like, they're going to know. All these other adults that are actually just falling for it, they're dumb, I guess. But the kids, they're going to figure it out. So we're going to have to do something about that.
Well, what's interesting is when you start to become a teenager, you start to question everything. And so when you're a teenager and people are coming up to you and they're saying, hey, you're going to say this. You're going to go, why? Because a teenager will literally say, why do I have to brush my teeth? Why do I have to go to bed? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do this? So I think, and I could be wrong, that the first sun child probably lived a little longer than the rest and started to question things. But I do want to backtrack back to Abaraku and him being accused of high treason. His punishment was that he had to live inside of the Danichi for the rest of his life.
Imagine it was pretty fucking warm in there.
You remember that one scene in SpongeBob where there's this dude with his whole eyeballs burning?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I imagined this man had to go through.
Well, on the bright side, no pun intended, I mean, at least Abaraku could hopefully hear Rikoru getting burned alive up above him.
Ooh, yeah. So Abaraku, was sentenced to live in there for the rest of his life. And eventually he did die, and they scattered his clothes. I have a lot of weird questions about it. They scattered his clothes to thank him for everything he did, which just seemed a little odd to me. But as they start to realize that these kids are going to become in the know and they're going to realize they're being manipulated, they decide that they have to kill them before they could start questioning things. And they create a fake ceremony called the Rite of Solar Return, where they would take the sun child into the Danichi Mikoshi and incinerate them through the artificial sun's high temp.
And we thought being an orphan was bad.
I'll take being an orphan. What the fuck is this shit? All I was this good little puppet, and y'all decided to fucking murk me.
But now this isn't our first child murder sacrifice.
No!
Well, of course, they're doing it maliciously because they want to shut him up. Rue was a sacrifice as well. I mean, he was all for it and whatnot, but his parents were like, yeah, you're chosen, and we're gonna sacrifice you. There's people have been like killing a lot of kids.
Starting to think that the unified civilization really deserved what they got.
Seriously, Skynow them all.
It's like, you're killing kids? No, we only sacrifice old fuckers here. I've been watching too much Midsummer.
So then after they did away with one son child, then they named another one. And there was 7 of them in total,
Yeah.
like we said before. But like, you know what I think is even worse? So now these like 7 kids, they're being raised as these little puppets, but they're being raised not by their families, but by these like official like nanny-ish people.
Mhm.
And they're not allowed to talk to them. So like these kids had really lonely lives. Like they didn't have anybody to go out and play with, have a conversation with, nothing. They were completely void of.
Yeah, the only people they could talk to were these nobles that were manipulating them. And like Tiff said, they weren't allowed to talk to anyone, but on top of that, they became hated by the people of Enkanomiya. So it's like, even if they ran away and like found a home and did whatever, they'd be hated. Like, no one was gonna take them in.
Yeah.
Like, they were like, fuck you, kid, get out of here. Like, you sentenced Abaraku to death. You speak on behalf of an evil god that's really a light bulb.
But there was like a whole bunch of like heinous things that the noble people made them do, right? Like I took it as, at least, like if you spoke up against the nobles or you like, I don't know, crossed them across the street the wrong way, they were like, oh my God, kill them. And they like came up with some reason as to why. And they used the children to kind of carry out those bad shits. So that's why people started to hate them.
It's kind of like the underground version of the Lawrence aristocracy in Mondstadt.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Oh yeah, these corrupt nobles, ruling over everyone.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is just another reason, though, too, why these kids ended up getting sacrificed. Because they're like, well, the only person I can talk to is a noble, and they're telling me all this shit, but apparently the light bulb's a god, but the light bulb isn't telling me anything. And that's suspicious.
It is a little suspicious. So this kid's like, wait a second.
It's sus as shit.
What am I learning from the light bulb?
Nothing. It's just a light bulb.
Why is this? Oh my God. I'm referencing so many different movies today. It's The Lighthouse.
Oh, no.
It's The Lighthouse with William Dafoe and Robert Patterson.
Edward Cullen?
Yes, our sweet Vampa boy. At a certain point, it's a movie. It's very good. I highly recommend it.
Don't watch it with your parents.
Don't watch it with your parents. There is
Or any son children.
no. Oh my God.
Don't watch it with the sun children.
No, it is. This is R-rated for a reason. But basically, you're kind of watching people go through kind of isolation and what that does to somebody, especially when it comes to the idea of a light.
Yeah.
And now it's like, yo, what the fuck? One, it's so fabulous, but it's so, there are so many in IRL locations and in mythology. We have so much linking to light and the sun, because the sun, what does it do? Give us warmth, give us life, go on and go forth. But it is important. And the fact that these kids are like, this is important, and I'm burning my eyelids. The fuck is why be here and have this? I'd rather have darkness. Hello, my old friend.
But yeah, so eventually Rikoru, the first son child, is killed and sacrificed in this ceremony called the Rite of Solar Return. And there are 6 more son children that follow. Some of these son children were raised by a wonderful person named Clymene. Clymene was kind of like the head gal in charge of these child rulers, and she helped maintain their day-to-day lives. Because of this, she wasn't allowed to get married or have kids of her own, and she kind of took these son children in as her own. Was probably one of the few people, if not the only person, who truly loved them, if I'm being honest.
Probably.
Yeah, 100%.
she wasn't allowed to talk to these kids, and it's actually a huge regret of hers. So she would sit there and listen to them tell her all about their fears, their worries, their troubles, and she'd nod and maybe give them a hug, but she was never allowed to say anything to them. And it's one of her biggest regrets, and we know this because we actually meet her in game as a ghost. And we actually help her take back some of these regrets. And we'll talk a little bit more about what happens exactly in game later on. But she has a lot of regrets, and especially when Oropesu was killed or sacrificed, she was talking with them and they were like, please sing for me. It's the last thing I want to do. I want to hear you sing. I will never sing to anyone. And Clymene was too afraid of being killed by the nobles and didn't. And it's like this huge regret that she has. So not only were these nobles, who are unnamed, by the way, I don't think we ever get a single name of a noble person who caused all this havoc, which is insane that there is no written record of them because you think they'd be all proud of themselves. But not only were the nobles ruining the lives of these kids, but they were also ruining the lives of people like Clymene, these caretakers who ended up having such extreme guilt over what was happening.
And they probably wrote it down and put it in a library, and then Anju burned it up.
Fucking Anju. God damn it.
Always comes back to him.
He's sitting in the corner shrugging his shoulders like, meh.
Yeah, what am I gonna do? Shit happens. But like the fact that, because later on we do end up interacting with the ghosts of the children, the kid won't even sing to us because he still holds by his oath. So even in his little death and his like unrested soul, he can't even sing. And that was his like passion because she wouldn't sing for him.
So yeah, there's these 7 sun children. They all kind of have their different things. One of them really liked boating. One of them makes clay statues of women court officials, which is a little creepy. One was this real sick kid and ended up getting a lot of like medicinal knowledge. So like Baiju thousands of years ago. There's a little bit of everything. There's like a little something special for each of them. One of them was like a really bad future teller, but like if you ask them, they'd say they were the best. So eventually we get to the time of Urabashi. And as we mentioned earlier, a child that is not a sun child and does not have an E at the end finds Urabashi hiding in a cave and is like, please come be our god. We're listening to a light bulb. And Urabashi's like, yeah, light bulbs, that's a bad idea. And he comes and he decides to be in charge. So we skip forward. We're not going to talk a lot about Urabashi because we do have an episode on him eventually. So we skip to the actual Enkanomiya story quests. And there are 2 story quests in Enkanomiya that help us get to this huge history. One is something along the lines of like hide and seek. And that is where you have to go and find all of the sun children. And once you find them and talk to them and do something for them, each of them will disappear. We also find out that there is a like gravestone for each of them through a separate quest line where we meet the ghost of Clymene. And she asks for your help paying respects to the children, and she's really looking to help lay their souls to rest. Originally, she thinks that her memories will be enough to do this, and she helps us unlock the Soul Guide's locus, which, if you've done the quest line, is this like beautiful semi-see-through sparkly triangle that appears in a specific area of Enkanomiya, and you have like these beautiful sparkly water paths that lead you to it, and that is the final resting place for the souls of the sun children. And originally she thinks that her memories of them are going to be enough to help lay them to rest, and it is not. Instead, we use her memories and also have to go find something called the Divine Bridle. The Divine Bridle is a green like crystal thing. It's in the shape of a pyramid and it's in this like stone enclosure, and it's a symbol of the sun children's authority. So we come back with it after like offering Sango pearls to all the kids' graves, and we come back and use the bridle and the memories, and we are actually able to lay the souls to rest. And Clymene is also able to rest in peace.
And by rest in peace, she went bye-bye.
Yeah, all the ghosts kind of slowly shimmer away. And if you haven't done any of these quest lines, big tip, the Sun Children's ghosts only appear when you're in Evernight mode. So make sure to do that if you're looking to start this quest line.
And that one's actually a hidden one.
Yeah.
It's not actually one that you need to do. So you have to do the one with Clymene first, because that's when their souls, they actually show up and stuff. And that one's like a part of your, I think it's like the God's children will dance. The children of God. The children of God shall dance.
Yeah, I think that's like an accomplishment you get when you do it, right?
Yeah, it's an achievement. It's the achievement once you do the full hide and seek quest.
But while that is the history of Sun Children, I think it's crazy that half of that lore, again, is hidden through a hidden quest line that you don't have to do, which is wild because it seems like such an important part of Enkanomiya's history, but also, therefore, Watasumi's history. There's a lot of trauma in the Watasumi bloodlines. But I know, Al, before we started recording, you were telling us a little bit, and we made you stop because we wanted to hear it firsthand live.
Yeah.
A lot of this has to do with Apollo and his kids in comparison in Greek mythology.
Yes, it does. And I'm at a point where I'm kind of fucking aghast, which it makes sense because we've talked about Helios, we've talked about Hyperion. We have a lot of very Greek names coming up. And when I was going through kind of the quest line to find all the Sun Children, because at first I was like, who the fuck? This is a creepy little child. And then it clicked and made sense. And then I met one of them, and their name is Ion. And I'm like, interesting, Ion. And knowing that Genshin loves to put in Greek lore, I looked up Ion. And who does he happen to be? He is the son of Apollo and Chrysia, the daughter of Atreletheus or whatever, a king of one of probably the isles or city-states. At a certain point, he is a demigod.
I'll show you a demigod.
Hades 2 has come out, so I am a bisexual icon right now. Thank you. So a lot of them going around and looking at all 7 of these Sun Children. First, we have to understand the meaning of the actual quest name. Phaethon's Cytros, which is one of the main quests. Phaethon is the son of Helios, the Greek god that pulls the sun on his chariot across the sky, and the Oceanid Clymene or Clymene, the sweet lady who raised these kids. And then when we look at Citros, that is actually a dance. It's a traditional Crete dance. And we'll have a little video linked for you. And it's just a traditional Greek dance. So when knowing it is a dance and knowing the type of dance it is, it's a bunch of people, men and women, holding hands, kind of going around in a circle, in like a half circle, almost like a crescent moon. When you find all the locations of all the Sun Children, they are in a crescent around the Evernight Temple in the shape and formation of the dance.
Okay.
And it gets even crazier because each and every single Sun Child's name is partial to one of Apollo's sons.
Okay. And who is Apollo equivalent to in this situation? The light bulb?
Yes. So in Greek mythology, depending on which age you're looking at, whether it be the Hellenistic or the earliest Homeric age, Helios and Apollo could technically be the same god. It really depends. Most people who know even just a little bit of Greek mythology, when people say Apollo, they think the sun god. He's not really a sun god. He's really the god of music and entertainment and inspiration to a certain degree. And Helios is the sun god because he happens to actually pull the sun chariot. But again, they can become interchangeable depending on what age of Greek history you're looking at. So it's pretty easy to put Helios and Apollo as the same entity. So you can kind of say these are all Helios's kids. So we have Serpio, who's Auspicius, who was the Greek god of medicine. And when you look at his tombstone, it's talking about how he got very sick and he recovered and he gained this great knowledge for medicine. I mean, he still ended up dying, but when you look at that comparison, I mean, the fact that it's kind of it's so easy to place them into the role of this specific Apollo's son. And now Apollo has dozens of children, not as many as Zeus, but a fuck ton still. So we have Rhysostasio, who can be compared to Aristasis, another demigod. We have Usumenasu, which is Ismenus, which is also another son of Apollo with another Oceanid.
An Oceanid.
Yes, so there are about 3,000 Oceanids in Greek mythology. They all have names, they're all related. It's kind of crazy. And then the first son child, Riku, is Lycaris, which is the son of Apollo or Helios, and the nymph Corycia. And then we have Pyramonon, which is Philemon, another demigod son of Apollo, Ion, we talked about. And then there is probably the most contested one, which is Oripisu, which is actually a reference to Orpheus. And you know how Orpheus is this great singer, this great musician. And with Oripisu, they only want, like, the last thing they wanted was for them to sing. In many different regional stories, Orpheus is not the son of Apollo, but in some regions and in some timelines, he is. So it can kind of be give or take.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we can take each and every single one of Apollo's sons and be able to link it directly to all 7 of the sun children in their aspirations through their tombstone and a little bit of their names. Some of them, it's not a easy, like, comparison.
Okay.
But everything on their tombstone is almost verbatim, like what these children of Apollo have done and were about.
So I have a question for you, Al, because you know a lot more about Greek mythology than I do.
I don't know about that, but we shall see.
What I know is all from movies and TV shows and games. I don't know that much, except I really like the witchy one that I always forget the name of, but Hecates. Anyway.
You mean Hecates or Circe, whichever one.
Hecates. I definitely did a research project in like 6th grade on Hecates. But what do you think this comparison and everything means for the world of Genshin? Like, do you think there's going to be any like future, like what could
Yes.
you see being like foretold in the future of Teyvat based off of this? Or maybe like some missing pieces to the Sun Children's tale that we haven't seen?
I wouldn't say it's a missing piece to the Sun Children's tale, but I definitely think of it as kind of like a precursor to what a sun god kind of symbolizes in the world of Genshin. And it's almost a creator god. We could put in the primordial one as a sun god, as a creation god, because in many mythologies around the world, the sun god is the primary, is like usually the head of a pantheon. Like, you can look at Egyptian mythology. Once we get to Natlan, I'm going to talk so much about it, but we go to Mayan culture and Mayan mythology. We have a lot relying on the sun, because the sun is, you know, it shines in the sky, gives us life, does what the sun does. And we've had multiple instances of the sun kind of falling in Genshin.
Yeah, it can't keep its shit together.
No, it cannot. And I think that's kind of calling back to it. We had the sun chariot fall to the ground. We've had the primordial one kind of shit the bricks. And we're not exactly sure what the fuck happened. Deshret is even considered a sun god, and that ended up horribly. We currently are in a space where the sun god would technically be Zhongling, and he's the one who's lived the longest and probably has the most corruption or like erosion, as he calls it.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility that these large forces that quote unquote keep the world turning will fall, and their fall creates a cataclysm.
Brandon, does Kiana represent the sun at all?
I don't know. I mean, she's tied more with the moon, but that's because Honkai is tied to the moon.
Much like Genshin too, which is interesting. It seems like the
Yeah.
sun is like a hidden challenger.
I just wanted to say I love that they're obviously using a lot of Greek mythology and just a lot of ancient mythology from different parts of the world and each region that we go to create story devices for these ancient civilizations that are no longer around. So just like we like to think about Greek mythology, it's like they give us, you know, this Greek mythology that is in Enconomia, and then, you know, you had like the Norse type of stuff in Dragonspine that was
Mhm.
like the previous, you know, era. In Fontaine, you have Remuria, which is Roman. and you have like the whole Deshret, like the whole stuff with the genie and everything, and Sumeru. So every region that we go to, they're giving us this like extra add-on where we're actually digging into more mythology that's based on stuff from our own world, which I think is fun.
Yeah, that's true. I only asked about Kiana because when I think of the unknown god, I think that her color scheme looks pretty similar to like a sun character, you know? And that makes me think of like Kiana as Hershey the Void. So I was just curious because I know she lives on the moon and studies for school on the moon, question mark.
Well, you could always take that as a juxtaposition that if the sun keeps shitting itself, this is getting really deep into it, but the sun being kind of a masculine energy and the moon being a more feminine energy, maybe it's
Lumine ether.
maybe it's kind of showing the fact that it's like, maybe y'all need feminine touch here. Y'all just need to let the women take over, which is why you see a lot of very powerful women taking over roles in leadership in current day Teyvat.
Maybe ether's going to cause the next cataclysm.
Oh shit.
Well, maybe the primordial one was the sun god, and the second who came is the moon god.
Ooh,
I
and
like
then
that.
The twins are like the reincarnations of them.
Ooh, new theory.
Remember, like the moon princesses like fall in love with the stars or whatever.
No, they fell in love with the sun. They fell in love with the sun, Chariot.
Well, I think they fall in love with the morning star, and then
Yeah.
that curses everyone. And so it would kind of make a lot of sense because we've talked about the primordial one and the second who came having this big fight, but then they work together to take down the third descender.
Mhm.
So it would make sense if like they had this big fight, but then learned how to coexist.
Yeah.
And that's why you have like the sun kingdom and the moon kingdom potentially.
Can I tell you guys this random crack thoughts that I had while researching for this episode? You guys aren't going to appreciate it that much.
It's one way to sell us on it. You're gonna hate this,
Is
let me
it-
tell you.
We're gonna hate it, or just Tiff's gonna hate it.
Oh, no, it has nothing to do with Honkai.
Okay.
So you know how in our way back when we did an episode on Enkanomiya just as a whole, I talked a little bit, I believe, about Child and how Child's like water daggers that he uses look pretty similar to the like scattered weapons that we can find in Enkanomiya. And I just had this like total random, like making up my own shit thought that I've talked a lot about the fact that Child's father is supposedly an adventurer, and there's a lot of like fan theories that maybe Child's father somehow ended up in Enkanomiya, and that's how he brought like Child has these water daggers that are really his primary weapon, and that maybe his father brought him home or whatever it might be. But can you imagine Child who cares about nothing else but Tusser, and he's listening to his dad tell these stories, and he's like, yeah, I looked into it, and there's these things called the Sun Children back in the day. And just Child's face being like, they sacrifice kids? Like, I feel like he'd be so appalled by that. I know that he's a serial murderer, blah, 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 a psychopath, whatever you want to call him. I know, but he has a soft spot for kids, and we see that with Yoimiya.
Yeah, nothing bad ever happens when a psychopath has a soft spot for kids.
No.
Yeah, I can't.
So yeah, that's my random thought that I had, and I'm totally gonna write a cute little story about that one day.
Well, or maybe Skirk.
Ooh.
That would probably make more sense than his dad, but
Or maybe Alice with she has her KFC lore.
That is true.
we don't know if Alice and Child are connected at all.
Oh,
though.
true.
Not yet.
True.
Not yet. I like that theory.
Can I just bring up one thing about the Sun Children that I thought was pretty neat? When we do go meet them, when they're these little ghosts of themselves, and they tell us a little bit about themselves, and we read about them on the tombs in the previous quest as well. You know, we have these small little interactions, like we said, the one who said, "Oh, I can't sing because I made an oath that I wasn't going to." There is one that totally like calls us out for being a traveler. They're like, "You're not from here. Like, you're from somewhere else, and you're looking for somebody." Like, they know, like they clock us immediately. They ask us where we're from, and Paimon goes, "Mondstadt." Then Traveler just goes, "Yeah, Mondstadt." We're like, "Why are we hiding this?"
I mean, we started there.
But then there's one other one. Ion, I think, is actually the one that I thought was the coolest or the most interesting little thing. Our little interaction. Ion's a fortune teller, and in his grave it says that he was wrong a lot. And Ion goes, "Well, it wasn't actually wrong. It's just that these people had some really grim fates. So I kind of made it a little bit better and told them things are going to turn around. Like, yay!"
Oh yeah.
So basically, people thought they were bad fortunes, but really he was just didn't want to tell them the bad stuff and was just trying to make them feel better. So we're like, but are you really like, is this just a scam? And Paimon goes, okay, well then read my fortune. And he goes, I can't. Why is there all this interference? I can't read your fortune. And he's like, that's never happened before. I have to go study again. And it's like, wait, why can't you read Paimon's fortune? We've always heard of Paimon during the festival, all the stuff with Scaramouche, she's from that world. But the moment this little kid was like, nope, can't do it. Sorry, see you later. And I was like, oh, that just puts a little bit more suspicion on Paimon. And I thought it was interesting.
Definitely. I wonder if Mona can scry Paimon.
That's a good question.
I wish.
Because we know anytime that she's tried to scry Venti has decided to create a tornado and look up her dress to prevent that.
Which is funny because she doesn't even wear a dress, but that's how she sells it.
Yeah.
I'm like, girl, you have a bodysuit on.
Full bodycon swimsuit, my dude.
And she's like, my balloons.
She's talking about her alt outfit that we're gonna get soon.
Yeah, okay. Sure. You have a better chance of us getting the Scaramouche Harbinger jacket outfit.
And I did like too that the one that is named after Orpheus, like Al was saying, that was the singer, but he also played the lyre, and Orpheus played the lyre.
Oh, like Venti.
Little tiny little things are always really kind of cute how they add them in. And it's also very thoughtful. Like, these are some smart ass people who are kind of adding in these little tiny Easter eggs that really that doesn't do anything for, at least we don't think does anything for the story, but it's a fun little Easter egg and just makes you go, oh, look at that.
When I first heard that there were 7 sun children, Tiff, I thought it was going to be an Easter egg to representations of the 7 nations, but it wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you could kind of see it that way though. The first one being Rikoru, being that he's kind of associated with medicine, you could put that with Sumeru.
No, he wasn't. You're mixing them up. Rikoru was the first one that looked up to Abaraku and wanted to build something bigger and better than the Helios.
So leeway.
Can I just say that I love the fact that Beans corrected now? She's like, no, I know how to.
I need it. I need it.
No,
but it was like a proud moment. It was like a proud pod moment where I went, oh, Beans.
That's because Alec reading the Greek names and not the Genshin names.
I know.
She's just saying the wrong name.
Whoever liked medicine, that's Sumeru. Music, Mondstadt. Building shit, that's gotta be leeway.
Boating for that's
Farina.
It's Farina.
That's Fontaine.
So who's bad at reading their fortune? Is that Natlon?
That or Snezhnaya.
Oh Jesus Christ. All right.
Or no, Conria.
They're not a nation.
I know.
7 nation army. Ugh. Anyway.
They are, though. They're just not recognized by the 7.
Yeah, and I'm only talking about the 7. The Helios is Conria. Conria is a light bulb. So I do think that's all the time we have for today. It's time for us to check our mail from Kirabra. This week, we have a few messages from travelers, so let's jump right into it. Our first message comes from Kendon. And they said, here's my question for the mailbag. If you could live in any Genshin city, which would it be and why? Side note, I love the pod and have been listening since day 1. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you, Kendon.
That's so awesome.
I love your name, by the way.
I'm torn.
I know I am too.
See, I not only went with my city, but I went for a specific district too.
Tiff, go first.
On McCain Island, because I say it all the time.
But there's no houses there. There's not a home for you to live in.
Do you need a home? Do you really need a home for
I'll make a tent
fucking
on the
town?
beach.
Oh, okay, Xander on Christmas Eve.
I love that place. It's so nice and comfy and cozy and pretty. And I don't do it anymore, but just because have been in Fontaine so much. But I used to always make a portable waypoint and put it there. And every day when I stopped playing the game, I would put my character back to that space. So I would literally, that was my
So
home.
if you lived there, Tiff, what did you do when Ito took over for his first music festival?
I'm pretty sure I yelled like out the window, like, close that stupid racket,
You're like, get off my lawn.
you silly kids. Stop making all that noise. Because he was right next to it.
Oh,
Yelling out the window.
got it. I'm torn between Mondstadt and Sumeru. I love both of them. I've always said that Mondstadt is like my OG place, but I do really enjoy like plants and botany and stuff, but I guess I could still do that in Mondstadt. Also, there's a lot of fun drinking going on in Mondstadt. I actually have a place to specifically go to play cards, so I'm gonna go with Mondstadt. I think I would live in the city just because I want to have things to do. And I don't know, I just would really enjoy it. I like the Mondstadt characters. I think it'd be easy to like blend in and fit in and find a job. Gotta support myself somehow.
I know y'all expect me to say Port Ormos. And honestly, I was going to say that, but I thought of something better. And this will change once Not Long comes out, because I swear to God, if we do not have a Tenochtitlan fucking city, I'm gonna riot. I'm gonna riot if we don't have something on the water. But no, Aru Village. I want to be in Aru Village. I want to be with Candace and Deha. And I want to be easily accessible to practice anthropology in archaeology.
Oh, that's very you, Al. I like that answer. I didn't expect that. I was like, we're gonna party in Port Ormos with Al on the weekends, but she said no.
I'll just visit Port Ormos because I feel like I'll get too overwhelmed. Get too overwhelmed with Port Ormos. And like, I love the desert. I love it. This is Dr. Rikita coming out of me. I just want to look at pottery and mosaics and sand. Yeah.
And Brandon.
I'm going to say to live in, I'm going to say Fontaine, the Court of Fontaine. They have great public transit if you want to like take a day trip. I really love that. Like you
The
just take a
only
little
place
boat.
with public transit.
Yeah, you don't have to teleport, you could just like actually like get on a little boat and go around. And for a place to visit though, I want to give a shout out to Fischl's Castle in the summer event.
Oh my God, yes.
Because how fabulous of a vacation would that be?
Oh my God, it'd be so fun. I just want to go to the archipelago overall and just like, that'd be a good like archaeology spot too, Al.
Oh my God, it would. It really, really, really would.
The tops of those Mondstadt mountains, man.
I know we've asked this before, and I don't remember if it was our episode with the Shade Chamber. Does anybody still take the water bus in Fontaine once you had everything open?
No.
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 Oh,
I took it once, like just because I wanted to see what like the Melazine was talking about, but
I take it sometimes.
Yeah, I think I might have taken it one time.
What is wrong with me?
it's so long.
I know, but sometimes I'm just like hanging around, or I'm like trying to figure something out, or like looking at an artifact, and I just sit on there, and it just takes me
You
for a little
just sit on
stroll.
the boat to think
I
about
do.
life.
That's nice though.
You should ride the ferry into Manhattan back and forth, Tiff.
Oh my God.
Hey, I've had
No.
to do it where, very unfortunately, I've gone all the way across that ferry and go, oh wait, I don't have my Comic-Con tickets. Take the ferry all the way back to take the ferry all the way back.
Yeah, I think that Tiff, I'm gonna get you like year-round passes for the ferry.
They have that, right?
I don't know. I'm gonna find out.
Just go take the Staten Island ferry. It's free.
Nobody
Yeah, but
wants
that's
to go to
far.
Staten
Yeah,
Island.
no one wants to go to Staten Island.
You don't have to get off. You can just
stay
go
there.
in circles around the Statue of Liberty.
That could be
True.
fun. That could be fun. Well, thank you, Kendon, for your question. I feel like I had like the most obvious answer and I hate it. It's okay though. Anyway, our second message comes from Maria, who emailed us and they said, "Hello, I'm mostly called Maria, and I would like to say that I've been enjoying the podcast very much, and it really helps me with learning my English, being that English is not my first language. So the song Burning in the Embers, that is an old memory Arlecchino has, you could see Scaramouche in the background at the end, which implies that Arlecchino remembers Scaramouche, and that might mean that she is an Outlander or Descender. My theory is that she is the third Descender, possibly. And she could definitely also just be an Outlander, though. Arlecchino and the Unknown God have powers that look alike and are very unusual, which would mean that the Unknown God is the Descender and Outlander as well. I think, and you've mentioned it before, that the Unknown God is the primordial one or the first Descender. I do want to say, though, thank you for your question, Maria. We are going to answer to our best of our ability without spoiling too much for people who haven't maybe done Arlecchino Story Quest.
I love this theory. I personally don't think that Arlecchino is the third Descender, but I do think it could make sense for her to remember Skara if she is from Conria, because maybe people from Conria aren't affected by Irminsul.
So does that mean that Piero might also remember Scaramouche?
Yeah, maybe.
It's
That'd be
possible.
interesting.
I do like the idea that she's an Outlander because there's a couple of things. You know how in her, I think it's her burst animation where she references the moon, and all I can think of is the moon court. And that technically would be Outlanders because moons are orbiting this planet. Therefore, they're not of this realm.
Yeah, it makes me think the Moon Court could also be a similar, like a synonym for the Sealy Court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's her Crimson Moon.
Yeah.
She could be a Sealy, yeah.
She could be one of the dead sisters.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome theory. I just feel like that video wasn't a flashback or her remembering her past, but actually just showing us as if it happened. So I don't think it's necessarily her remembering and telling us. We just kind of learn it almost as if we're just seeing a regular cutscene. So Scar is there because he was there, whatever his name would have been at that time.
Skara, I think. The Balladeer / Skara.
Yeah, he's like younger. But like, didn't he have a couple different names at one point too? Or he didn't call that within the Harbingers. That was just what he called himself in other places.
Yeah, so the Harbinger name, like, I think the easiest one to compare to is Child. So you have Tartaglia is like his official title, but then they nickname him Child because he's like the baby of the group.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that Scaramouche's Tartaglia is Balladeer. I do not know where Scaramouche comes from. I know originally he was Cooney something, but everyone just like shorthands it to Cooney.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually very interesting that you bring that up because we actually got a message recently from Zell on Instagram who asked about it and said, do you think it's a pattern that everyone has their Harbinger name, a code name, and then their real name? And they use Child and Arlecchino as an example, and also Senora, who is La Senora, the Fair Lady, and Rosalind.
Mm-hmm.
Just very curious, and they were wondering what we thought maybe Dodore's like third name might be, and maybe it is the Doctor or Zandik. So that is a weird little question too. I gotta say, I have no theories on Arlecchino because I haven't done the quest line yet, and I don't even want to guess or say anything. But what I do want to say is getting to see Scaramouche and Signora in their Harbinger jackets was everything. And it felt like something that was robbed from us because when we see Signora's funeral, where we originally see all these coats, you know, Signora's dead and Scaramouche has left at that point. I think he's actually MIA technically in that video. So it was really nice to get the opportunity to see them in the coats. And it was also really fun to see the like 4 of them, like these OG 4 Harbingers, because the Capitano is also there. And it's like, oh, like you guys are like the OGs, aren't you? Where's everyone else? Who else was there? Like there's a lot of weird little questions there. And Scaramouche not buttoning up his jacket because he can't feel the cold is also everything. He's like, fuck your coat. I'm only wearing it because it's a uniform.
I didn't even think of that. That's fantastic. And he's wearing stupid shorts. He's wearing Sino shorts.
They're much longer than Sino shorts. They're like Cosmo like shorts. They're his normal shorts. He's not wearing little booty shorts. They're tight like bike shorts like Sino. Damn.
But imagine if he was wearing little booty short.
Or like kooky shorts.
I'm just thinking of Scaramouche twerking now. And you hear like a weird like rattle, like puppet sound.
It's just
Yeah, I wonder like how Scara picked his outfit, you know? Like he really doesn't have like needs in an outfit like most of us do, but he keeps it when he becomes Wanderer. So yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on Arlecchino and where she's from. Because I haven't done that storyline, I'm being honest. There is a part of me that believes that she's like, I know she's cursed because of the song Burning in the Embers video. And it reminds me very much of Caterpillar. So I'm interested to see where that goes.
Funny hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for Maria for your question. And thank you to Zell, who we briefly mentioned in that moment as well. That being said, I do think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, travelers, for becoming depressed with us again. Please do not bill us for your therapist bills. We can't afford our own. If you like this episode and you'd like to tell us about it or let us know what topics you'd like to see in the future, you can email us at talesoftavatpod@gmail.com. You can follow and message us on Instagram, Tales of Tavat Pod, or on Twitter, Tales of Tavat. Additionally, you can feel free to fund our therapy by visiting our Ko-fi, or you can rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Next week, we will be talking about Dea, so make sure to come back and listen in. Until then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Orpheus nerds. Which is also the new DLC for Stray Gods.
Stop! There's DLC for Stray Gods?